Welcome to the Fantasy Football Profit Podcast, hosted by Craig Phillips and Jeff Torrey. Visit us at fantasyfootballprofit.com. And now your hosts, Craig and Jeff.
Welcome everyone to the Fantasy Football Profit Podcast. I'm Craig Phillips, joined as always by Jeff Torrey. And today we're going to do a little quick episode here. Just wanted to give you some tips here, some tips and tricks for auction leagues. We haven't talked enough about auction leagues yet, but they are our favorite by far. This to me is the absolute way to do fantasy drafts. I mean, we've done 23 snake drafts in the last 2 weeks. And yeah, you know what? I guess it's the most standard way to do things, but auction is just more fun. You can go after who you want. You can build strategies. It doesn't compare, does it? It just doesn't compare, Jeff. It's the best. I mean, I know you love snake, right, too?
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously snake is fun. It's fun.
It's fine, but it's just fine.
It's also a way to keep it. I believe it's a way to keep it closer because you limit yourself. So if you're depending on the skill level, but if you have played for a little bit and you haven't done it yet, I highly recommend it. And if you have a league that you're going to create and it's people that are seasoned as far as fantasy goes, auction I believe is the only way to go.
And just don't be scared of trying it out. Try it out. It's better than anything.
Yeah.
All right. So here's some just tips and tricks that we have. So this is over many years of practice to try to figure this stuff out. But I think one of my first ones is you strike early, because I believe what I've seen is the top player in a certain tier usually ends up going actually cheaper, especially at the beginning of a draft. It's like the first guy maybe goes cheaper, first two guys go cheaper, and then everyone gets a little crazy after that. I think you just get this out of the way. Just get the butterflies out of the way. Get a guy right away. And I think that's just the way to go. Get him early, right?
Yeah, and I think a good example of this would be if you know in your strategy that you're going to go after a big-time running back, say. Mm-hmm. That's not that wild. So, hey, I really want one of the top tiers. Maybe I don't even have, I don't need Christian McCaffrey, but I'm going to get McCaffrey, Barkley, or Elliott, something like that. A lot of people, and I've done this before in the past as well, where you kind of throw someone out you don't want, right? But it's a scary concept now because, hey, say I throw out McCaffrey because I'm I really want Barkley. All you're doing is giving a baseline of a price that he's going to go for, and you'll be surprised. I know that right away you'll probably go over value of what you're thinking, and people will start pulling back. But as soon as that guy establishes the value and the next guy goes, then all of a sudden that third guy and you're like, oh my gosh, no one's left in that tier. Panic really does set in.
Ends up being where maybe McCaffrey or Barkley, whoever's first, goes for a decent price. The next guy goes for a little more, and then Zeke goes for way too much.
Yeah.
It's kind of how it plays out. So, and I say that the throwing guys out there, I hear that thrown about. They're throwing guys you don't like, right? Get the money off the board. I say wait on that. Wait on that until you have a more established team. And then when you're down on money and there's people that have a lot and you can't get these guys, then throw out the big time values to get their money down. I don't think you do that right away. Don't put yourself in a bad spot.
I actually like what you just said. I like what you were talking about, striking early.
Yeah.
And I think this is almost like part A, part B, right? Yep. So you strike early and then you mess with the market, right?
Yes.
You get your guy. I have Saquon Barkley. Now I throw out everyone else and they have to go out and get him. And then you take money off the board.
Yep. And I think it's the way to do it. So then the next thing I have is, I say it all ties together. Don't get caught watching, which ties into strike early. Don't get caught watching. I've seen this, and I had this happen to me early on in auctions. I still won those championships those years, but I waited, and the team ended up being not as good. I waited 20 or 30 picks before I got a guy because I was just I didn't like the prices. A lot of it is you get spooked. These prices seem too high than what you maybe planned for. But just don't let that get to you. You need these guys. These are the top tier guys. If they're the ones going, you need those kind of players in your team. So don't get caught up watching forever. And then all of a sudden, there's nobody left at the top. And you're getting these mid-tier guys. And you didn't get a top guy because the prices were too high.
I do feel it turns into kind of a bell curve. And not as far as price, but as far as everyone watching, right? Because the first guys, everyone's kind of watching. Only a few guys are going for them. The middle guys, everyone feels like they have a chance at. So they tend to overpay there. Because, you're kind of like, well, okay, what's 30 compared to 40, whatever, because, but you could have had, two of those guys turns into McCaffrey. But the big one, too, is at the end, people are thinking, okay, well, I have a lot of guys that I like down here.
Yep.
If I have a little bit of money left, and when I say a little, probably far too much, I can get all those guys. But guess what? At the end, you're paying $1. You're paying $2. You're not paying a lot. And all of a sudden, you not want to be the guy that has $20 left over out of a $200 budget.
Don't pull a John and end up with $41 left in a $200
right.
budget.
Yeah, part of that could be don't drink too heavily early on too.
You can add that to anything
if you don't do a lot of these.
But yeah, don't get caught watching. And I'll say also, okay, this could tie. This is not necessarily set in stone. It's don't get caught in a bidding war, but not necessarily. It just don't get. It depends on if you really truly want that guy. It can go either way. If you truly want a player and you don't care about overspending, then that's fine. Spend what you need to spend to get your guy. But in certain situations, don't get caught up just forgetting what's going on and getting in this bidding war with just somebody else because you want, especially if there's another guy in that tier.
I think that is the big point. I think it goes hand in hand with another point that you were going to make, and that is establish your tier rankings.
Yes, that's the next one.
And I think that is what it is all come down to. I think Craig is absolutely right. If you have we'll just keep going with the example of running backs, right? If you're like, okay, we're bidding back and forth from McCaffrey. Everyone knows he's really good. If it gets to a point where you're like, okay,
this is a little crazy.
Yeah, this is getting out of control, and he is not letting go. Maybe he's a Panthers fan, whatever. You know what? Saquon and Zeke are still out there. I can still get a guy, one of the guys I want. Let go. It could work out. So definitely have an idea for that, and rank your tiers. Like you can grab it off the internet, but you have to be okay with it. So if you're saying, hey man, I don't think that Nick Chubb deserves to be in that tier 2 or whatever, you move those guys. So you really have an idea of, you know what, he might be the last, puppy at the bowl kind of thing. But if you don't feel good with it, do not rank him that way. I think it's very important to really go through and take a look yourself.
Tier rankings are a must. That's what I do for our 2 main auctions. I have a tier set, and I know exactly where these players are and when it's going to end. And now you have to strike, because I always look at it. I need to get a certain amount of players from each tier is how I kind of play it. I don't necessarily, maybe I target a player or two, but I really target tiers. It's kind of what I do. And that's how I've kind of, crafted how I've done my auction drafts. And shoot, I say between me and Jeff, out of our 10 seasons in our main auction, we've won 6 of the 10 titles. So I've won 5. Jeff's won 1.
Yeah, what? I won the last one. And actually, to be even more so, titles could be fluky. It doesn't seem to be for you. It is for me.
I've been in the playoffs 10 out of 10, and you've been like 8 out of 10?
8 out of 10. And we have the 2 most winning records in it. And it's a very competitive league.
But I think these things work. And then the final one I have is, I think we've both used this forever, is just don't spend on quarterbacks. I know there's some out there that are great, but I just say just don't do it. And it worked out for you great last year because you got Lamar for nothing. And usually you get somebody, and there's enough, these quarterbacks go for nothing. I say don't spend on quarterback, don't spend on tight end, don't spend on kicker, don't spend on defense. I think all 4 of those positions in a auction, it's just don't do it. Spend $4 on those positions, right? $4. Because those tight ends, especially tight end, even more than quarterback to me. I love the later tight ends. I would say literally spend $4 on those positions, save that money for everything else. Just how I've done it. I mean, there is sometimes exceptions, but I say this is like just you have to cut and dry go for this. Like if you want to spend 2, 3, whatever.
Right.
Depends on what your money situation is later. But I just say go in there not planning on spending on those positions. If you spend a couple dollars because something comes up, sure. Like I know a couple seasons ago, I did get Travis Kelce. I did not plan on that, but his price became like $9. And I'm like, that's actually a great value. I did it. I don't always do that, but yeah. So go into it thinking you're not going to spend on those, but also don't just be prepared to maybe jump on something that's way, way too low and out of whack.
And the interesting thing about this is almost like poker compared to, whatever another game would be. But It's funny, snake versus auction, right? Because snake, you can't go off, like you can't be put on, on notice. Like I feel like I've seen a bunch of people like lose their mind because they go in with a certain plan, it does not work out, and all of a sudden they're not spending any money, and then they won't even they have so much more than anyone else, and there's a mid-tier guy, and they're like, well, I'm not going to spend $20 over his asking price, when you're like, dude, you're going to end with more money.
Yeah, that's the thing. Forget about values once the draft starts. Just forget them, especially in the middle of the draft. Forget the values ever existed.
Yeah, and it is very funny. Depending on what is another one too. Find out what platform you're actually going to be drafting on and look at their values, because each one is going to be different, and those are going to be the ones that are front and center. Those are going to be the ones that people base it off of. every time I do this, I definitely put like at least a 10% bump on every single player. So I'm not surprised. You could even go 20% depending on how your league drafts.
Yep. It depends on how savvy your league is in a way, because our league in the early days, those values were everything. Now it's kind of gone away, where everyone does their own thing, but it just depends. If you're in a younger league that hasn't done it for very much, the values are going to be everything to them.
Yeah, so. and it's funny too, because if you told me Lamar Jackson is worth $22, right? Mm-hmm. That is what it is, and it's all the way at 26 now. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going to be thinking, oh, you're overpaying. You really like him. You really like him. But another value sheet could tell, like this one, could say, hey, he's worth 28. So you're still getting a discount. Look at a few, understand what you want to spend. Yep. It's definitely more time intensive than a snake draft. You can't just jump in and do it. Yep. But it is a lot more fun, and you really can build a team any which way you want. Yep. I've seen it. I've seen all of them be successful too. If you want to spend all your money on 2 players, it's much tougher, but I've seen it work. And if you want to spread it out so you have all mid-tier guys, like tier 3 to 5, like your whole team, I've seen that work out too.
Yep. So, all right. There's auction draft tips and tricks. It is by far the best way to draft. So if you haven't done it yet, get your league to do it. It's a lot of fun. So, all right, that will do it for today. Talk to you guys next time.